Good morning, everyone, and coming to you live this morning from Sandton. And we are, of course, continuing to profile some of the most fabulous women in our country. And as I look around, it's a room full of inspirational women, women scientists who were celebrated last night. And of course, this was at the South African Women in Science Awards, the 2026 edition. And this, of course, is the 23rd year that this particular awards ceremony has taken place. And it is, of course, the flagship program for the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, the patron of which is, of course, Minister Professor Bladen Zimande, who joins us here. And we are very happy that he got as little sleep as the rest of us from last night straight into this morning. We appreciate the commitment, Minister. And he's, of course, on our first panel as we celebrate some of the women. But before we get into conversation, I want us to have a quick look at some of the work that these incredible women are doing. And of course, just a quick look at some of the work that these incredible ladies in this room, and there were 30 of them who were awarded prizes last night. And let me tell you, it ranged from 30,000 Rand. Everyone who was here last night went home with some money, and from 30 up until 100,000 Rand. But I quickly want to engage Professor Bladen Zimande on this, the Minister of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. Minister, this of course is a program, and this year's theme speaks to placing women at the center of science, technology and innovation, which is of course the mantra of your department as well. And we saw last night the wonderful work being done, but talk to us about your commitment as a department to ensuring that this work continues.
Thanks, Sakina, and greetings to your viewers and listeners. Let me start by congratulating these wonderful ladies for the great work that they are actually doing and showing that women indeed do have potential. We've come a long way. That's why we've kept and we are committed to continue with this program. The awards are important because they act as a further motivation to the ladies who are being recognized, but also they play an important role in encouraging even girls who are still at school that there is no blockage. If you work hard, we are committed, we have an interest, you can also succeed. But the awards also, we must understand them, Sakina, they are sort of at the end, as it were, because this is part of a program of transformation to empower women. We start investing in them long before they come to get these awards here, giving them all sorts of support. in terms of scholarships for their postgraduate in particular, and giving them support, including emerging researchers. So we do a lot of investment. The National Research Foundation is the main and lead entity of our department that actually funds the pipeline, as it were, because we must maintain, keep that pipeline serviced. Of course, we are very proud, those who come out of the pipeline with these kinds of achievement and recognition. You know, I always say, Sakina, I'm a mama's boy, proudly so, because I was brought up by a mother from age 12, and I know what women are capable of doing. So in doing this, also I'm being motivated by what I saw of my own mother. Growing up in a very poor environment, but somehow making ends meet. I don't know how. So I'm very committed to this program because, as we say, any country that wants to advance today must push science, technology, and innovation. But much more importantly, we must make sure that women are at the center of that. Women actually participate in that. Because we can't be a country that only affirms half of our population, which is men, and not actually affirm women. Let me just also say this. Even at universities today, we are about just under 63% of students are women. That's a huge achievement, you know. Maybe for the younger generation, they don't understand. Those of us who have come through that, we know that women were hardly ever, they were always a minority in our universities. Of course, we still have a challenge that some of the critical subjects like engineering and some other such disciplines, they are still male-dominated. So that's the next track that we actually want to attend. We can't just say we've got majority women students in universities, but they are absent in other critical
and they may be
disciplines.
The majority, but they are not the ones leading the research institutions in the main. They are not the ones in the boardrooms who are the decision makers in the main, and that is something that needs to be addressed.
Definitely. For instance, I don't know how many women vice chancellors do we have? Very few out of our 26 universities. Also, if you look maybe even at deans in particular disciplines, it's not women, it's men. So that's a challenge we have, but that must not wipe out these achievements that we are making, that we are indeed making a lot of progress. I'm very proud, you know, of the ladies here, and many others, of course, who are in the science field, because they play a very important role in ensuring that our country develops using science, technology, and innovation.
Indeed. And let's get into some of what these fabulous women do. And I tell you, the work is so inspirational. And as I've been saying, the people who are watching, that is perhaps the most important role that you guys are playing here today in terms of inspiring them, in terms of showing them that there is a place in the laboratories for them, there is a place in the lecture theaters for them, there is a place in whichever sector they wish to get into, because you are living proof of that. Let me start at my extreme right, and that's of course Professor Tebogo Motiba, a winner in the Innovation for Impact Distinguished Women Researcher category. Talk to us very briefly about the difference that your work makes, because in the end, it comes down to practicality.
The difference that my research do is basically in the underserved communities. My research focuses on prevention, control and management of non-communicable diseases, where we conduct research, especially in the rural communities. But what we do is we always co-create with the members of the community. We don't go there and instruct them and tell them what to do. When we go there, we want to hear from them because they have knowledge of what they are experiencing. And after that, when we have elicited that knowledge, then we sit down with them and say to them what might be the solution. And then we talk and we come up with solutions. And then scientifically, we come up with solutions based on the knowledge that they've given us. Because if you intervene, but you don't involve the people who are experiencing those problems, you find that at the end of the day, the communities don't use those solutions that you came up with. Therefore, my focus always is to co-create any intervention with the communities. That's what I do always. And along the interim, what I do, what I vowed to do is to empower women. I have upskilled a lot of academics at the University of Limpopo. Why did I do that? It's because our faculty of health sciences, after demerging with Medunsa, we didn't have capacity. I think we were just 2 professors in the whole faculty. Then what I did is I went in all the departments, because when it comes to prevention, control and management of the NCDs, meaning the non-communicable diseases, all departments must be involved. Like, for example, I'm a nurse by profession. Our profession is a caring profession. Then I have to interact with pharmacy department, nutrition department, psychology also, it must come into the picture. Then I had to go and encourage academics to enroll into their masters and PhDs. That's why at the moment, from 2020 to date, I managed to graduate 18 academics in the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Limpopo, of which 15 of them are women.
And that, of course, is fabulous. And Minister is here, he sits in cabinet. So some of your problems, he may not be the right person to address to, but he could be a conduit to speak to some of that and carry the message to Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi or whoever else it may be, because that is a very real problem where you have the scarcest resources at community level, but they carry the heaviest burden when it comes to communicable diseases and actually treating that, Minister. So perhaps what you should do, Prof, think about what it is that you want to send Minister Tuma Yena to go and tell his colleagues, you know, in terms of what needs to happen. But, you know, fabulous work once again, and I'll come back. But our keynote speaker from last night is, of course, Dr. Wibke Hutiri. And speaking about AI, and, you know, everybody's talking about AI at the moment. Whether we fully understand it or not, we know it is a thing right now, and it is something that cannot be avoided. What would you say is the most important message that you would like to leave, not just us in the room, but South Africans at large when it comes to AI?
I think with all the excitement and enthusiasm about AI, I always feel I have to bring this counterpole and balance and say, we should treat AI as a normal technology. It will become like the internet, that is part of our everyday life. And so it's really important that we engage with it, that we learn about it, that we understand it, that we actually make it our own to solve our problems. So we shouldn't put it on a pedestal. We shouldn't see it as magical and mysterious. We shouldn't treat it like another human. We should just treat it like technology, and we should be critical about it. We should demand that it works for us. We should think about how we can make it work for us. We should think about how we can own it. And I think the reason why it's important is because we've got a history of taking our knowledge and experience, of sometimes that not being recognized, like Prof actually just said. And then somebody else comes and sees the value in it, takes it, valorizes it, beneficiates it, and sells it back to us. And with AI, we can't let that happen. We can't let people take our stories, sell our stories back. Take our music, sell our music back. Take our culture, sell our culture back. So part of owning AI, engaging with AI, making it our own, is really one of saying, this should be our technology to own. The information we put into it, we want to get back from it. And we will use it, we will engage with it, we'll learn it, but also we will make sure that we reap the benefits that come with any new technology.
And of course, for youngsters watching now, thinking, okay, this is where the world is moving, but how do I get involved? What's a good place to start?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think part of what made AI so popular over the last years is that it's become so easy to engage with AI, for example, through a chat interface. And now we even have, even on WhatsApp, Meta tries to allow you to engage with AI. So I think the thing that it hides is that you engage, you get responses, you don't always know how things work at the back end. The beauty is there's so much information on the internet about how AI works that the moment you're curious and you want to know what is behind this chat response, I would say start by looking for an introductory course on how does AI work.
All right. And next to you is, of course, Dr. SAWiSA, who built Pregidose for radiation workers to monitor radiation doses. Explain that to us in layman's terms.
So Pregidose is a mobile app for fetal dosimetry, and I know that is very sciencey, but basically what it is, and maybe let me take you a little bit back, if you go to any X-ray department, the first thing you will see is no pregnant women are allowed here. Inform us if you're pregnant. But funnily enough, almost 90% of the workforce are female workers, and a lot of them are young childbearing age. So, you will see a sign that says no pregnant workers, but there comes out a pregnant worker. And pregnant workers in healthcare, we often focus on the patients, but we forget about the workers that are there. And they are exposed to many different things, and especially someone working with radiation, it has the potential to cause fetal deformities, induce childhood cancers, and various other things in high doses. So they are very vulnerable. And where I found this problem is when I was pregnant with my own children. And when I asked, how do you guys manage your doses? And they're like, we don't actually really track our doses. Or it was done very inconsistently. And I was bewildered about this because this is your child that you're carrying. You're working in this unsafe environment. And, there should be more protection. I always say you could be carrying the next president or the next minister. So you have to, safeguard your fetus. And that's where Pregidose, the idea of Pregidose emanated. It was basically traditionally paper-based, inconsistent recording. So Pregidose offers a digital hub where they can input, they can track their doses. If their dose increases, it will tell them it's very high. But what was very interesting is that when we developed it, it was a user-centered approach. So we had pregnant workers. And beyond the dose tracking, they also said, we have many pain points. We have fears, we've got anxiety, we feel isolated. And they also said, we actually lack education. We don't know our rights as pregnant workers. And they actually, as Prof was saying, they co-created this. And they added, they suggested wellness features, educational links. So this Pregidose is the first app in the world dedicated to pregnant radiographers, and it was developed by the user for the user, and especially it was developed by women, and I think that's very important. As Minister was saying yesterday, women understand women's problems, and they should be part and parcel of developing a solution for themselves.
Oh, fabulous stuff. And you see, and we saw Dr. Wipke and, some of the other moms in the room, and these are the realities for women. And as you say, more often than not, you have women of childbearing age in professions where they need to literally come to a stop, to a standstill in terms of advancing their careers. Men don't have such problems. You just continue going. This is why it's important that women have the support of men in order to advance. And it's fabulous to hear of these sort of innovations that make it easier for women to continue their career paths. Associate Professor Jane Ndlovu, a doctoral student, highs and lows of pursuing an academic career, and I think it follows on nicely from what Dr. Hafsa, Professor Isop was saying. So talk to us about that, because there are so many pitfalls, but let's talk about the good, the bad, and hopefully there's no ugly.
Okay, thank you, Sakina. So I think firstly, in terms of the highs, it's the support. And I think it's important, the support that we get from women, but also the he's for she's, the men who also support. Like you said yesterday, the men who showed up and helped their women when they're working. But I think also that support coming in from how do your community help you? Because I think that feeds into my research, which is looking at how can we help women who need the support to get a tax deduction so that they could get more money to be able to, it could be helping them to put more bread at the table at the end, or it could even be helping them to leave an abusive relationship, which I think touches on some of these issues, especially it being Women's Month, if we're looking at gender-based violence or the gender pay gap. So I think my research allows me to go and explore those issues, which is something I have a passion for.
Which is absolutely fascinating, because when we think about the laws that are actually promulgated, we don't think about that, Prof. Nzimande, in terms of how disproportionately women are disadvantaged when it comes to what they need to do, and also we don't compensate them for some of the things that they should be compensated for. And that's a conversation I want to pick up with you. It's one that I think is worth extrapolating further, because so many of us are impacted by it as women, but society as a whole. Professor Nzimande was saying, he was raised by his mother. South Africa is a country that has many more women-headed households than where you have two parents or a man-headed household. And therefore, it is so important that we look at women and how they are affected, how they can perhaps get tax breaks. Because there are only two certainties in life, Professor Nzimande: death and change, not taxes. We can change the tax system. So we will, of course, at some point come back and look at that. But we're going to quickly move along. We need to take a break here on Morning Live. Hope you're enjoying this. And, of course, just profiling some of the wonderful work being done by these fabulous women in the room. And there are so many more seated here in front of us as well. We'll continue right after this. We're on a quick break, quick change. I really want to pick up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I?
Ooh, my goodness.
Okay.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9,
Stand
10.
by. We're going live.
1, 2,
Stand
3.
by.
Yeah, okay.
And welcome back. And of course, continuing to celebrate phenomenal women in South Africa all of this month. And I must say, we've really taken it up a notch this year. And I have loved every single one of the women that we have profiled from across the length and breadth of this country, but of course also just so many different career paths and the wonderful work that so many women do. And I think it really is worth celebrating, as is, of course, what we're doing here this morning. And last night, we were celebrating scientists and researchers, and they are filling up this room because these are the wonderful women that actually make a change to our lives on a daily basis through the work that they do. And I quickly want to introduce the next group of women on the panel, and we just profiling them and the wonderful work that they do. Professor Mariki Venter is on our extreme right. Next to her is Professor Lynn Hendricks. Then we have Professor Zanthi Hunt, as well as Associate Professor Sabrina Kumshik on my extreme left. And still with us, of course, is Minister of the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor now Blade Nzimande. Now, I just want to quickly get on with it with the women, just to look at, once again, your body of work. And let's start at the end, Professor Venter, and also how that finds practical expression, because we know that the work that you do is to make the world a better place.
So my research uses a One Health approach, which refers to the health in humans, animals, and the environment, that we work together to really do identify diseases early so that we can prevent, detect, and respond to any emerging and re-emerging diseases. So this is really to look at epidemics and pandemics in future. I've worked with wonderful collaborators, both locally in Africa, in South Africa, veterinarians, communities, medical doctors, virologists, environmentalists, to identify these diseases early. And then also internationally with the World Health Organization, we've been very involved during the COVID pandemic to identify where the virus came from. I was on the Scientific Advisory Committee for the origins of novel pathogens. I chaired that for 4 years, basically. And then also that reflected back to my own research, where we looked at mosquito-borne viruses that emerged from Africa and then spread internationally, as well as respiratory viruses. So for me, it's very important to identify and work with diseases that has a local impact, but then also affects global health.
And of course, you know, when we think about it, you talk about things like the COVID pandemic, which Minister Nzimande mentioned last night, and how South Africa was at the forefront of identifying one of these strains, and the assistance that afforded the world in dealing with that particular pandemic. And, you know, your work, once again, thinking of things like malaria, when we talk about diseases that travel, we are so scared these days. You hear of something, the Hunter virus, and you like, Lord, shut down the country, don't let anyone in. But of course, that's not how the world works at the moment, because we've become a very small village and things travel.
Yes, definitely. And so I was part of the national genomic surveillance network that actually identified Omicron. And it was a really, getting scientists together across the country, women across all universities that were part of that, and rapidly identifying those strains when it happened, reporting to the Department of Health, and then onwards to the World Health Organization, to ensure that we actually control this, and it really did have a global impact.
Let's move on to Professor Hendricks. Tell us about your work.
Good morning. So I do research about research. I'm very interested and passionate about making sure that research is equitable, that the people involved all feel ownership in the process of what we're doing and helping researchers understand how to select the best method so that you can get authentic stories from the people that you are working with. So lots of community-based research, setting up community hubs, working with people to tell their own stories. And I see myself more as a vessel that the story flows through more than the person who is responsible for the research. And I think it's so important for science to understand the complexity that people live with. And I think sometimes as scientists we focus on one area of somebody's life, but they're also mothers and daughters and aunts and uncles, and they are whole beings. And so when they present themselves to you to be part of your study, they're presenting their whole selves. And human to human, the Ubuntu philosophy, in research is what drives me and the group that I have at Stellenbosch University.
So one of the exciting new developments is, of course, the new category that was introduced at the SAWiSA Awards, which is, of course, about community engagement. And because that is front-facing and speaks to what you are doing, because it's so important for communities to be taken along that journey and to understand where we're moving.
Absolutely. I used to work for government before I moved into the university, and a lot of the time there were policies, there were decisions made, and when you take it to the community level, people are at those community meetings and they are fighting, but they weren't invited to participate in the journey. They weren't invited to prioritize, and I think those same lessons apply in the science we do. So whether you're doing lab-based science, community-based science, you really have to ask yourself, what questions are you trying to answer? Which priorities are you putting up, and who is it for? Because if it's for the good of the community, then ideally they should be part of the decision-making in the beginning.
Absolutely. And moving to Professor Xanthi Hunt, talk to us. What do you do?
So I work on adolescent mental health. And I was mentioning yesterday that I work at the Africa Health Research Institute, which is in Umkhanyakude, so northern KZN. And in adolescent mental health, I am very interested in two key things. The one is context. So working in an under-resourced area, working in a rural area, how do young people think about mental health? Are the symptoms that matter to us as adults and as clinicians the same types of things and experiences that matter to teenagers who are going to school, who are worrying about getting a job? And the second thing next to context that I try to think about in my research is the developmental phase of adolescence. We tend to talk about adolescents with a T as this kind of fixed population who we work with, but their mental health happens in the context of adolescence, this phase. And again, just thinking about the young people that I work with in the community, what does it mean to be 13? What does it mean to be 14? And how does mental health unfold and play out in this kind of moment where everything is changing in your brain, in your body, in your social relationships, in your relationship to your family?
And there's, of course, a different context, which is a cultural one, in an area like Umkhanyakude, and just how culturally we have looked at mental health. Generally, it's not something that we think about, that we want to deal with. If someone has problems, the way it's been dealt with traditionally, leaves a lot to be desired. So how do you deal with that? Because when you have families who are struggling in that sort of area, where it's difficult to just put bread on the table, and now this child comes and, we're just saying, hey, they're going through adolescence. We don't have time for this. How do you bring that message home to parents?
I think I'm very fortunate in KZN that there's a very rich history of people working with indigenous knowledge systems, traditional and faith healers, with families, with religious-based belief systems. And so there's kind of this rich history of being curious about how that shapes what is appropriate as a supportive service, and how you think about mental health and how you communicate about mental health. I think for me, the very grounding thing is always curiosity, and trying to understand what parents are thinking and where they're coming from and the constraints that they face. And most parents just want the best for their kid. And so tapping into that and understanding how that might shape what they're open to, and helping them listen to the young person in their household.
And moving on to Professor Sabrina Kumshik, and talk to us about your work, please.
Thank you so much. I work on biological invasions and mainly trying to understand their impacts on the environment and socioeconomy better. And of course, many of you, if not all of you, are impacted somehow by biological invasions and their effects, but also most of us are dependent on some introduced plants and animals in our daily lives. Let's be it for food or because we want pets at home or anything like that. And so by understanding better the impacts they have, we can then also improve the management. But because it's positive and negative impacts, we really have to involve all the stakeholders. We can't just look at how badly they affect biodiversity, for example, but we also need to look at what benefits they have and what negative effects they have on human well-being. And integrating all of these things into a decision-making framework is what I've been working on over the last 15 years. And we're also trying to really improve our co-creation. It has been mentioned many times before. We can't just go out there and tell people what to do. We really need to make sure they are involved in the process, and their opinions and fears and knowledge is taken into account when making these decisions. I've been working closely with policymakers and government, mainly in South Africa, but also at a global level, to then also get this knowledge across to making better regulations and better laws and improving the way we manage these things at all different types of levels.
And of course, speaking about policymakers, there's a man who sits in Parliament, so he's part of that setup. What is the message that you would like to put out to our lawmakers in the country where they can facilitate and make sure that the work that you do actually does find expression in our policies?
I would like to say that it's very important to make evidence-based decisions so you can underpin what you're doing with data as opposed to making decisions based on some beliefs that are out there. So it's really, there's a lot of data out there and a lot of knowledge we have on these biological invasions, and of course we always need more, but that's the case for everything, and that can't stop us from making decisions. So use the evidence that is out there, obviously supplementing it with knowledge that is not published, and then make decisions based on that.
And again, once more, we are so inspired by the work done by all the women in this room. Professor Nzimande, you said 45 minutes was a lot of time. The time is up. You have a minute. What message would you like to leave us with?
Well, firstly, I think there's one thing I need to emphasize about science. Maybe to explain to viewers and listeners a simple definition of science, as far as I'm concerned. It's using existing knowledge and sometimes new knowledge to solve problems that face humanity. And it's solution-oriented. We need that in buckets in our country. Sometimes I listen to people who are critical. Yes, we are a democracy, we have to be. But in the end, what is to be done about the problems that face us? That's science defined in. So it's something very important. In the process also, what I need to say is that a lot of the things that we were hearing yesterday and today about what these ladies are doing, they are coming up with new things, hence the importance of innovation. I have no doubt that amongst these ideas, new things that are coming up, some will grow and become big. Hence also the importance, by the way, with the private sector.
Indeed. And I'm loath to do this, but we're out of time. Can you believe it already? And that's where we have to leave it. But this, of course, concludes the celebration of our women scientists, researchers, the fabulous work that you were able to hear just a little bit of this morning, and there's so much more. And this, of course, the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation's flagship program, the South African Women in Science. And this year's theme, of course, was about placing women at the center, not just of science, technology, and innovation, but as they say, in every sector. And that's it from us, and go Bokke.
Yes.
And, but of course, thank you so much for joining us, and that's a wrap here from Sandton. Back to you, Leanne. Thank you. Well done. It goes so